Hi everyone, we'll be starting. Hello and welcome to the final and the third Master Talk of Vision. I'm Moisha, an Institute Cultural Convener of the Design Club, and today we have with us Jérémy Landes. Jérémy is the founder of Studio Triple, a graphic and type design studio based in Paris, and it's now operating in Berlin. In recent years, he has released commercial typefaces like Digestive and John on international foundries like Future Fonts, Ono Type Company, and NAN. He has been contributing to the Velveteen Type Foundry since 2011, creating and releasing open source typefaces used all around the world. He mixes his love for graphic he mixes his love for organic shapes and fresh food in his creations, going from corporate identities to custom typefaces or projects with contemporary artists. And he'll be taking over now for the Master Talk.
Hello, Moisha. Hello, all. I'm happy to be here, and I will mainly today talk about my work and what is type design and how I came there. We will have questions at the end, but don't hesitate maybe to also ask them in the chat, and I will try to. I know I can't have access to the chat, so no, let's keep the question for the end. Okay, I will start the presentation now, and yeah. Okay, do you all see my screen with the presentation?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So, as said, I'm called Jérémy. I'm living in Berlin. Also, I'm from southwest of France, and I'm operating again under the name of Studio Triple. But before that, to give you a bit of insight of my younger years, I started as a graphic designer in an architecture studio in Paris for 6 months. Then I worked for 1 year in a type design studio called Typo Fonderie for 1 year. And then with a graphic designer called Julien Legendre for 3-4 years. Since then, since 2017, I'm working fully as an independent, under the name of Studio Triple. Although I had already worked as a freelancer before, like, many missions since I was since the end of my studies. But one of the longest collaboration I have is with Velveteen Type Foundry. Velveteen Type Foundry is an open source foundry releasing open source fonts. And I will show you our website. And so this is Velveteen. We've been created in 2010 by Frank Adebiai. And you can see these are all fonts that you can try. And you can download. So, for instance, this one is one that I did. This one is made by a friend, etc. And all of these fonts, you can download them, use them, and modify them for free. This is a concept under open source. And you can see some use of these fonts, for instance. We mostly have Latin fonts, but we start to have some Greeks, some fonts with Greek, some fonts with Cyrillic, and we will have soon some fonts maybe with Arabic this year, or Tifinagh and other writing systems. Velvetyne is a collective of 11 members operating mainly by chat, and we are mainly French, but our designers are from all over the world. Yes, and we have like released more than 50 different designers and 70 type families. But I went really quick with that. It's like, what's type design? So I heard that you had like some graphic design presentations already, and you might have some notions about graphic designs. And in graphic design, we use fonts. And so fonts are shapes of letters. I mean, the shape we give letters, and tools like to give different aesthetic, different styles to the writing style. And I'm more also because of having like being French, I'm specialized in Latin type design, even if I'm starting to explore a bit more different scripts. And so to draw a font, we need to draw all these characters in a font. Now, like this one is supporting most of the European and South American, South American scripts, plus Vietnamese also, and some African languages. And we can see that I have 650 different glyphs to support all these languages. And I'm going this software and drawing all the glyphs with vector lines, vector outlines, basic curves. So you might have seen vectors elsewhere, and they're compared to pixels, which they are kind of the opposite. They, no matter how much you zoom in on a letter, it will never get pixelated, because this is a mathematical description of curves. And so by placing these points and these handles, I'm describing how the letter will look at any size. And we need to design all the letters. And the thing is that we need to draw them in every style. Not in every style, but in master style. For instance, here you have a regular, and here you have a bold. And if I overlap them, we can realize that the bold is not an automatic version of the regular. It's not like just an outline with the weight is placed in an organic way. And so you have to draw that. For instance, we see that there is more weight added on this size than here on top. Here, the weight is not changing. And so these are decisions I make. And if I place side by side a true bold and an automatic bold that I just took an outline on the regular, we see that the automatic bold looks weirder somehow, more clumsy. Like for instance, we lost the nice detail that was here. Then here it's lost. This part is too thick. This is weirdly spiky, etc., etc. And so I will start with the first type design project that I released with Velvetyne, the open source foundry. Solid Mirage is a typeface I did for a band called François in the Atlas Mountains 4 years ago, I think, for a release of their album which was called Solid Mirage. And we see that it's a typeface called in a style called a Didon or modern. It has a high contrast between the thicker part of the letters and the thin part of the letters. So you see there are like some thick line, some thin line, and this text like is inspired by 18th century typefaces, but this one is a mono, like each letters has the same width, but also the same height. And we see that the lowercase and the caps share the same height. It's a display font, it's an in font text, and it was used, for instance, for all the communication of the album. So here we see it on the vinyl. Here on the posters or the vinyl cover. Here for the promotion on the French and German TV station. And yeah, so it started with Latin, but because it's open source, a Greek type designer, George Triantafylakos, decided to make the Greek of it. And he could just download the source files, and modify them to add the Greek. Then he sent them to me in 2018, and we improved them so that they would look consistent with the Latin. And then we released this version as an addition onto Velvetyne. And last year, a Russian designer, Vika Usmanova, started to draw the Cyrillic version to write Russian and added it to the font, and we also decided on how to make it consistent. This will be released in the next weeks or months. Another typeface I made for with Velvetyne is called the Murmure, and it was for the identity of a graphic design studio called Murmure in France, and for their website. And here we see images that they made, and this is a font that I wanted to be condensed. So we see the letters are narrow, they are more tall than wide, and they have a bit of, it's a sans serif, there are no serifs, no legs, but it still has some contrast. Some parts are thin. And I will show you their website. So we see that it's used on their website for all the names of the projects. And it has an editorial feel. Like it means like it feels a bit like a magazine typeface. And I thought as a website as some kind of magazine. And we see that they use it for titles. But also to silk screen on concrete. Yeah, and yeah, etc. Here we see other examples. But then once again, so I got paid to make this project for this company, but they knew Velvetyne and they decided to make it open source, so available for anyone. So anyone can use it and modify it and whatever, because they wanted to somehow make something for the community and use it as a communication tool to promote them. And then Alex Sloveninov, designer, came and offered to draw the Cyrillic. And he drew the Cyrillic for the font, following what I did for the Latin. And we see that it works really well. And George Triantafylakos, the Greek designer, also decided to make the Greek for this font. So we have both of them. And now Naima Benayed is working on an Arabic version of the font. And we see that the Arabic design is more challenging because it's less, it's more different than Latin type design. The roots of the writing system comes from a really different place, but it shows some really interesting thing, and I think it will be quite a great success and really original. Another design made also custom and also with Velvetyne is Pillow Lava. Pillow Lava is a font that we did with Anton Moglia for a magazine called Cercle related to volcanoes. And we wanted we were inspired by flowing lava, but also lava lamps, these 70s lava lamps that you might know. And we did this font that is really for titlings, and inspired also by somehow graffiti and gesture, but with some really geometrical feel. So if you see, here's the O, for instance, you have really just circles, straight, circle, straight, circle, straight. Same with the V. Like it's just like part of circles and then part of straight lines. It's really organic, but really geometrical at the same time. And we try to bring some nice tension inside of it, inside of the design. And to have this kind of really homogeneous and organic texture. A Cyrillic version is ready also. So here it was in the magazine. And then a designer from Austria decided to make a 3D version of it. He took all the letters and sculpt them in 3D. And so we see we can really turn around. It's not just like an effect in Photoshop. And you can download these files from Velvetyne too. So it's a contribution also to the project. And you can use this 3D font for whatever you want and modify them. Now going to not open source work, a font that starting to make me allow me to earn money with tile design, with retail tile design, is Digestive. You might not know, but fonts, like I showed you before, custom open source fonts, that is, meaning like fonts that I made specifically for people, but then that are also available for everyone. But most of the fonts are called retail, meaning that you can go on some website and pay for them to be able to have them for some projects. And my first retail font was Digestive. It's a font I started for a poster, for bookstore, for showing a whole novel. We see like the small characters here are pages of a novel from Georges Sand called La Mare au Diable. And you have the whole novel on one poster in really small. And this, I draw this title. And when I made this title, I was like, oh, I think this could be a font. So I started sketching it, and these were my first sketches, and started to make a font. Really condensed. It's a mix between a bit of Gothic, a bit of Didon, a bit of Art Nouveau. And this font encountered quite some success, so I put it. Then it was sold on a website called Future Font, where I'm selling my fonts. I can show you. And Future Font is offering fonts that are not finished and that are in the making. And you can buy them and then receive an update. This is not a good example, but for instance, token from a friend, we see that it's a version 0.6, and there have been 5 versions, each with new styles, new weights, new things. And Digestive was released as a font like that. I started with all caps, only caps, and this really narrow style. And we can see here some in-use, here by Studio Fatih Yapar. Here by The Hundreds. And here by Studio N. Walsh. But I saw that a lot of people were finding it too narrow. We see that the letters are really tall, and so when they are small, I mean, it's not a super legible font, but when the letters are small, it starts to be really not legible, and people wanting a more wide font. So I decided to draw a wider version, and also everything that is in between. And here we see, for instance, the first version that I drew and the wider version. And if we compare the wider version in purple with what happens when I just distort the narrow one into a wider one, we see that the distorted version looks really, I mean, funnier and bumpy. And the curves are not nice, so I corrected everything to make it look a bit calmer. And every version in between. And I could show you something. And then with the technology of variable font, which is a new technology, sorry, I was able to make these animations where all the letters can change between the narrower version and the wider version. But I felt that there was a need for a font to use at smaller sizes for accompanying it. So I started to draw this style calmer for smaller sizes. And here you have the wide style, the wider, and here you have a one for text. And what I did is like I increased every details. The small pointy things were now smooth and big. The thin parts were thicker, and all the white was also bigger. And I also decreased all the weirdest details. And we see that side by side, at the same size, the one on the right is really more calmer and more legible. And it means to be used with the other one to accompany it. And they share the same spirit somehow, but this one is really softer and calmer. I made this year to celebrate the first year of the final release of the font, a scarf to promote the release, and which is what we call a specimen. It's something to show how the font works. And I showed the font like different style, different sizes, and made a photo shoot to promote it. So, but these were more older projects. And what am I working now? I'm spending a lot of time working on a font called Jaune. And which is again a titling font because you saw that I'm doing a lot of fonts for titles and not so much for text. But I'm working a lot on it because I must finish it for final release in something like 2 months. Jaune is a family which I started with this black version, really dark, and then later expanded it with lighter versions. And we see that the main concept with it was to have in the black, usually when you are drawing a black or really bold font is that you don't have so much room, so everything got really closed. And with this font, I decided to embrace that and to make it touch, while you would avoid normally to make the different part of the letter touch. And this was kind of logical for the black style. But then I applied that on the lightest styles, and then it means that the letters have to do some kind of gymnastic to be able to close themselves. It's a bit counterintuitive. And you see it here, that the letters are closed, but they are trying to stay a bit legible still. And it brings this kind of really distinctive shapes. One of the other distinctive thing about this font is that it has a really big X height. What does that mean? It means that here we see the ascenders and descenders, the parts that are longer than the normal letters, are really, really short, which make it less legible, but which allows to make this really tight setting with not too much space between the lines. And it makes it really good for headlines. But once again, I started to think that this font could not be used in so many different contexts. So I started to draw a version for smaller size. And with opening the shapes, we are starting to try to keep the more distinct features. And we see that then I have a big family with jaune grand going from black to thin, then jaune petit going from also black to light, and jaune micro. And they should all be used, we see them together at different size, this one for titles, this one for big text, and this one for smaller text. And my goal is to keep somehow the same taste, the same energy, but make them work at different sizes. And how to do that? So here we see the micro one in big. It looks kind of nothing than the title one. So here are them side by side at the same time, same size. What are the differences? So everything is about space. On the titling one, I said like the ascenders and descenders are really short. So there are really not so much space on top of the letters, while here there is more space, which make it easier to distinguish a D from an A, for instance. Also, the space between the letters, the matrix, is bigger. Here they are almost touching each other, while here there is a lot of space, which make it easier to breathe, and also they don't clash with each other. And then, the more we go for text, the more I opened the space inside of the letter. So here it's, by intention, it's super closed. Here it's a bit open, and then it's really open for text. Same with the A. And same with the details, like the ink traps here, really small, and here really big. Here's some specimen to show the applications. And now, a project that kept me busy for 15 months and that I sent the last files 1 week ago. And this is a titling font and text font for Food Society, some restaurants in France, food courts. And here we see the different font working for business cards. And it's a family built on 60 different styles, something like that, going from narrow and thin to narrow and black to wide and thin and one and black. And then we have some outline versions that you see, that you don't see yet, that you see here playing together. And the outline version can be used with the black version to make these bicolor fonts. All the fonts are used together to make this kind of dynamic layouts and the logo. And it's again a variable font, and I would like to show you their website. I will recharge it. When you go to their website, the font animates in a random way between all the different versions. And this is thanks to a newish technology called variable fonts, where you design all the different, you draw basic fonts and different variations, and then your design can interpolate smoothly between all of them. And here I can show you how technically it's done. So you can see how the font is built with points and anchors, like in my design software. And then the different versions keep all the same point and anchors. So here we see from the narrow to the wide, and then same with black. And I can show you just the structure. And here's the mathematical calculation between all of them. And then up the outline version. And I can really smoothly get every possibility I want. It's infinite. And we use that for their logo. So this is their logo that they use in their emails, for instance. It's an animated version. But yeah, it can be used for the website or for any communication. It's a bit, can give you, make you seasick, maybe. This font will be used on wine bottles, the website on mobile and a desktop, but is also used in the places. And here we see in ceramic, painting on ceramics by artists Colonel and Spit. And here for the storefront, for instance. So it's not open yet, and on the walls. So I show you the title version, but we also needed a text version to work with it for the menus and everything. And I drew this one, and you see that this one has a lowercase, while the other one doesn't. And it has more space between the letters, and brings more legibility to the family, while keeping some distinctive sharpness. You see that the T here, the X, the S, everything is really sharp, like the distinctive F and E of the logo. And I made a range of 6 different weights for the font. And we see how they can play together here, title and text. Now, what about the future? I have this font that I drew with Anton Moglia for Leslie David a few years ago, and that we want to release. It was a custom font, but the project got cancelled. And it's a font with a kind of futuristic design, but bringing a lot of alternates, so different letters for different design for every letter, with different aesthetics. So you have dot versions, really squarish versions, blob-esque version. You see, I use a lot of organic shapes in my designs. And they can be mixed together. We set up a design axis from brutalist to kawaii. And we have alternates, not for every letter, but in every category. And we see that the A can be really hard. I don't put the normal. Then I have this kind of freed drop and another on top. And then at the end, it comes back to some kind of geometry. And here we see how it can work together. It's really a mix between super geometric and super organic shapes. And I had made this prototype of an animation, a variable font, with where we see the S can be decomposed and go to one version to the other one. And this was to be able to be used on the web. And this is a font. I can write with it. I can. It's not a GIF. It's not a video. It's really in the font. And technically, we see that I have a lot of points moving smoothly in my different styles. Yeah, and we see here the trajectories of the points. And then I have a few challenges, but I'm really keen on designing a serif font more for text, because you can see that I never done it yet. And I started this one, but it's really just a prototype. And not only fonts. So for instance, recently I drew this logo for a Berlin club, which in fact it won't be this one. I need to work on another one, but still. So I'm still working on identity, like some people maybe you saw. A logo for a company working with a blockchain for enforcing copyright for photographer and their identity. And we see that I still use typography. My main ingredient is typography and colors to build the identities. And a logo for a knitting company. And another variable logo for a talk program, conference. So that was it. I hope you got some, you understood what I wanted to talk about, and you, yeah, that I could fulfill your curiosity. And if you have any question or want to go back to one of the topics, we can.
All right. So if anyone in the audience has any questions, you can unmute and ask the questions. Okay. So
I wanted to ask something. So, it was a pretty insightful presentation. I wanted to ask, like, which language is the most fun to design the letters for?
Which is the font that the software that I use?
No, which language is the most fun to design the letters for?
I think it depends of the style of the font. I mean, the thing is, we can say also about easiness. I just know for now how to design for Latin mostly, even if I made some sketches for other things. So Latin for me is easy and fast, while some other things might be more challenging. But for instance, in Latin, I can show you. So in Latin, you can still have, this is not supporting every Latin language, but it's still like, 450 different signs. And there was something that I never made and I thought was really hard, but in fact is not so hard and quite funny. Is like to draw for Vietnamese. And we see that Vietnamese has a lot of really distinctive accents and also shapes, like for the a horn for the O or the U. And I mean, I really like the challenge of these new accents and new things to draw. But in German, you have the ethet, which is two S together, which is also really fun. I mean, it really depends on the style. I'm about to learn. I mean, to take a course in Cyrillic for fun for Russian and other languages with two Russian type designers, and I think this can be really fun, but also quite close in a typographic type design language to Latin. So I think it can be manageable. And I think I would really like to learn how to make font for Arabic, because it seems really that there's so much to be done and it's really challenging, but still can be done by one person, while some other scripts like Japanese, for instance, are just too much work for one person. So even if they can be fun, I mean, it's just like it's quite impossible to do them alone, and especially when it's not your native script or language. And yeah, I mean, it's really fun to know how to deal into these specific signs. For instance, you have also some in Icelandic, or you have some that. I mean, even, you know, there are all these specific characters that you need to draw in for different languages that are really nice things to draw. But also then, for instance, I have in this font a different A and E. And so for the AE sign, I needed to draw 7 alternates. And this was just too much work. Like we see open, closed, open, then a one story A, same open, I mean, then straight bar E open, way too much. I think the nice thing is to try to be creative even when dealing with language support, and not be boring, but also try to be something legible and respectful to the languages. Yeah. Did it answer your question?
Yes, it did.
You're welcome.
Hi, this is Unnati. I had to ask, what advice would you give an aspiring designer looking to work in your field?
I think it's nice to get in contact with people in the field, to build some network, because a lot of people are quite approachable and you can talk to them and to us, I mean. And so to not get shy and to ask. And then, I mean, spend time sketching, experimenting, and showing it to other people to get feedback. There are some nice mentoring programs also where you can enroll and then have feedback from other more experienced designers. And I don't know, I would say looking how things are done in other fonts, especially open source fonts, because then you can really open them and look how it's done, and then trying to find your own voice. And yes, and meeting other people and trying to find also maybe some things that haven't been done or needs to be done, some styles that haven't been explored, and for this you need to be curious in graphic design, so to see what people are using and what they are not using and what they might need, and this is really interesting. Any other question?
All right, so if anyone in the audience has more questions, you can unmute and ask those questions.
I had this question. Where do you typically get inspiration for your typefaces?
I mean, in a lot of different places. I have to say that custom work for clients is a great way for me to do things that I don't do usually, because I need to create a lot of ideas in a small time and things that I don't do usually. History of type design and graphic design for sure, but also I try to get inspiration for other things. And for instance, design in general, I said lava lamps and things like that, but also nature and animals, illustration, video games, and to try to convey some different concepts, other concepts into type design or other shapes, and then sketch them, draw them. Yeah, and I think the nice thing is to try for each different person to have their own inspiration. So, you are not like drawing the same thing again and again. And I think that, yeah, I find it sometimes a bit sad when people are just making revivals. Revivals is just when you are updating, redoing an old model. And I really like when people are trying to bring their own personality or some new things inside of that. And it can come from really different places. And there is the thing like typefaces, they bring some meaning and feelings. And sometimes they don't bring the feelings you thought they would. But trying to convey some different feelings is also a nice thing. Like, I know that some of my fonts sometimes make people uncomfortable, and I like this thing, and I'm like, okay, let's try to make a font that will make people uncomfortable. Or what would be a font that will make people comfortable? Or would make people hungry? Or I don't know, won't make people to rest. And then you're trying to invent shapes.
Thank you.
Aesthetics. You're welcome.
All right, so we have a question in the chat box. What are the initial steps to learn and explore typography?
I think to learn typography, you have to start a bit to learn a bit about graphic design and how fonts are used, what are their meaning, what meaning they convey, and then you learn about the history and also the anatomy of type design, like serifs and how the contrast work, and then to draw. And for instance, I know that my one of the first exercise I had was to fill a notebook, a sketchbook with observation drawing of fonts, like copying fonts by hand, logos and things like that. And this helped so much. And this is what made me go into type design. And then I was starting to draw my own shapes. Also, calligraphy can be a really nice point of entry into type design because you understand the logic of texts and shapes, because all fonts or letters are coming from calligraphy, whatever calligraphy it is. And at some point, learning graphic vector drawing in the softwares, which like help you represent your ideas. And there are a lot of type design courses in the world that someone can follow. Most of them like post graduation classes that can be in 1 year. You can learn a lot about type design, or 1 year and a half.
Okay.
And getting an internship at some point also in a foundry or with a designer can be a nice way to learn, for sure.
Okay, that's insightful. And I wanted to ask, so when you have to design a typeface for a brand, so how do you approach the process, and what are the multiple aspects that you focus upon?
It depends a bit about each project because they are always different. Some of them are really clear ideas about the style of font they want, some of them not at all. But most of the time I try to imagine how it will be used and what style I want to convey. For instance, for the Murmure, I wanted really this magazine feeling, so really condensed, for instance, with a bit of interesting details. Food Society, there was these different styles going together. The Solid Mirage, the first one that I saw, the client was really saying that he wanted a font with serif in the Didon style. So yeah, but I'm always trying to find where I can bring something surprising in the project and a bit new. And but it's mostly with constraint, like trying to create to decide in what field we are playing and then trying to explore this field of constraints. And seeing fonts that might answer half of the question but not the other half, and then you ask yourself how to answer the other half of the question.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we can take a final question from whoever in the audience or anyone if you want to ask.
Did any of you tried a bit of type design, drawing letters, or is into it?
So we were planning on exploring a little bit about 36 days of type, and seeing where that gets us, because it's a fun challenge to try out, and it could be something that kept us going too. Yeah.
Nice, nice. But I would say about 36 days of type, it's a nice challenge, but letters, I mean, there is something that I really like about font is like it's different letters together. And it's really nice to draw one letter, but also when you draw 3 letters together, something new is happening. Because a font is a collection of letters, and the fact of having different one together, it's what brings the spirit of a font.
Right. So to basically ensure that you're drawing them all in a similar pattern and a similar theme.
Yes, yes, and side by side, it can really, you understand so much when you do that.
Right.
To apply the same ideas to different letters, or to see that it doesn't work and then you need to have other ideas. For instance, there was this question about for what language is the funniest to draw. And I have to say that, for instance, figures, numerals, are really hard to draw sometimes.
Right.
Because they don't come from a Latin writing system. And we can see that when we build them, because a lot of letters in the Latin alphabet, you can copy some parts to draw them from other letters. But the numerals, you can't. You have to invent a lot of new things, but it shouldn't look too different. And this is really hard. And this is how you feel that they come from a different heritage. But it's really funny too, but sometimes really challenging.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask, like, what is your favorite font name, as in the name itself?
In the name itself? Wow, what a question. Good question. Finding a name for a font is really hard for your own font. So I respect when people finding really nice names. I like the names of I like Kofo Flick Flack, for instance, from Kofo Foundry. Maybe I can show it to you, and I really like the fonts too. I will share my screen again. So Contrast Foundry, Foundry in Russia, led among other people by Maya Doroli, which would host the Cyrillic workshop I will attend. Drew this Kofo Flick Flack, and I mean, I really like the name and the font, and I feel it goes really well with the font style, which is playful. And if you write Flick Flack with the font, I mean, it just works, for instance. I like a bit silly names, playful names. Yeah. But also Onotype.co, where Digestive is, from by James and Monson, the font names are really cool in general. They are so you have Square, Compadre, Degula, She. Obviously is a really, I really like the name, obviously, and the font is also nice. Yeah. But it's a really tough game to find a name.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So before we conclude, I'd like to thank Jeremy for taking out time for us and giving us a peek inside your creative process. it was really fun getting to know so much about fonts, and just looking at them was really amazing. So thanks a lot.
Thanks for the invitation. And if some of you have some questions or want to know more, you feel also free to write me an email. I would be happy to answer it. And yeah. So have a nice end of festival. And yeah, talk to you another time.
Same, all right. Also, for everyone who's here, we have been recording the session and we'll be uploading it on our YouTube channel. So you can, if you want to rewatch this, so you can always go there and have a look at it again.